What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Infinity One podcast. This is episode number 6. Today's guest is Meg Epstein. She is the founder and CEO of CA South, a real estate development and investment firm with over $1 billion in AUM. Meg's known for creating efficient modern lifestyles through purpose-driven developments across the Southeast. She has been recognized in Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, and more. And today we're going to hear directly from her how she built her empire and what she focused on next, and how she's reshaping the real estate sector with purpose. So Meg, thank you so much for coming on. If you could give our listeners a brief introduction as to who you are, it would be highly appreciated.
Sure. I am originally from California. I moved to Nashville 10 years ago. I went to UCLA and derailed my career in finance because I graduated in 2008 to do architecture and building in Bel Air, right behind campus. So I started by project managing really large homes and $50 million projects. And when I moved to Nashville, there was no luxury home market like that. So I took courses in real estate, commercial real estate basically, and ended up becoming a developer here. So it was a really great time. I started my firm about 10 years ago, focused mainly on urban infill and industrial projects, and we full circled about 400 million since then. Mostly used institutional capital. We've had 2 funds, and now really focused on our condo product and our urban infill industrial product.
That's amazing. That's so amazing to hear. So I know you got your start on the luxury home end side, doing homes here in Bel Air, and then you did some up north. I want to hear how you transitioned over to the commercial side, because it's typically harder for people to transition from one product type to the other, and you need to leverage experience, get more people on your team. I want to hear how you were able to do that.
Sure. When I got to Nashville, first of all, Nashville is not as hard to build as
Okay.
California or New York or something. So there's that. People are very friendly, and it's just not, as litigious or anything like that. So that helps. But I got here, I took, I forget what it stands for, but CCIM has 4 courses in commercial real estate that basically just teach fundamentals in underwriting real estate, like pro formas and cap rates and just kind of basic concepts. So I took all those courses. That really was great. Um, and then when I first got started, I partnered with an architect builder who really took care of the actual building side of things, and I worked more on the capitalization and sales side of the project.
Hmm.
And that's kind of how I got started. And so I didn't know how to do it, but as I did more and more projects, I built out my team and slowly just kind of started doing everything on my own. But at first, I partnered with a builder architect, and that really helped.
Amazing. Can you tell us more about what was the first product type that you've built on the commercial side, and how did that go?
The first product type I built was a condo project in Nashville on the water. That was one thing when I got here. Nobody really understood why you'd want to build on the water. And I was like,
Uh-huh.
from California, I thought that was really weird. So I decided it was a for sale by owner sign. I saw the sign on a run, called the guy. He was a developer from Los Angeles himself. I think he went to USC actually. And he was very old, it must have been almost 80 or something. And he was developing this building. And so I told him I would help raise capital for it, even though I had no idea what I was doing. And we basically partnered. Long story short is I ended up taking over the deal from him because it wasn't working. I redesigned the whole thing and ended up being a really home run success, albeit a couple years late, but
Hmm.
just because it took me a long time to figure everything out. But at that time, I was kind of riding the market up, and so it ended up being, and I think it was like a 50% IRR project. It was really good.
That's
But it was just sort of got lucky with the timing that it was so forgiving, but I kind of learned all my big lessons on that one.
Yeah. So I know that condo projects are one of the hardest product types to develop, and it's just incredible seeing how you were able to do that jump going from the luxury home inside to condos. And now you're developing all these different product types like industrial, office, multifamily. How, I would say, easy has it been to develop these compared to your first condo project?
Everything's easier than condos. Having it be my first project, I think that's why I think that's how I scaled so quickly. Because once you get through a condo project, it's sort of like the other stuff is easier. However, it is still my most profitable product type, and that's why I'm kind of leaning back into it because I'm doing my fourth and fifth projects that are condos now, and it's really what I've made the most at, and I have sort of a more of a niche in. The thing about industrial, it's like, anyone can sort of do, I mean, not anyone can do development. Development's hard, but if you're going to do development, industrial is the easiest kind to do. So, but with that, there's a low barrier to entry, so there's more supply and it's less competitive. So I'm really focused kind of on my condo project for those reasons. But yeah, that's definitely harder than industrial or multifamily. Mainly just on the financing side. Like, building is a very similar process in terms of timing and, like going through entitlements and construction and disposition. But it's also just on the financing side, trying to get condos financed versus, apartments. Like, there's a lot more institutional capital for apartments.
Agreed. Completely agreed. So you've mentioned that you're really bullish on condos. Do you see that as the asset type that you're going to be focusing on within the next few years, or what product type do you think is going to be booming, let's say, within the next 3, 4, 5 years over in Nashville?
I mean, for me, that's what I see, right? But there's people that are, heavy industrial developers, and data centers are, something that I'm sure will just continue to have
Yeah.
tons of legs because of the demand of, you know, AI and cryptocurrency and everything else, right? So, which I just don't know about. Cold storage is another niche asset class that's been emerging. When I was in college or before then, student housing wasn't an institutional asset class. Now it is, right? That was just kind of like a new thing. It was kind of hard to finance. Banks didn't know how to wrap their head around the income and how many rooms it was that, so it's just every sector has its own niches, and you just have to kind of lean into a specialty and look at the data. I believe in what I'm doing now, not because of condos are just generally always undersupplied because they're a lot harder unless you're in like a Miami market to
Right.
finance. But also, it's my condos, you can short-term rent them out when you're not in them. And I think that trend of like the Uber economy and people utilizing real estate more efficiently and using like borrow, like Uber, like they don't want to own something, or maybe they own it but they rent it out or make income on it, is just a trend that'll just continue to happen.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And now, like in terms of analyzing the market and looking at the supply and demand factors, what are some specific, trends, metrics that you look at when you're deciding like what market to enter or what product type to develop?
Um, I've been just having lived in New York and California for so long, like I'm pretty bullish on the Southeast in general. So right now I'm just because of the market fundamentals and I think the business, like pro business aspect to the Southeast, I'm pretty much sticking there. Then within there we look for markets that have a strong hospitality. There's a lot of visitors. Um, Cost of living versus average household income. Those were very converged in Nashville 10 years ago. Like like people were making a lot, but the cost of living was low. So whenever you see that, that'll continue. You'll see a market that continues to grow. I think just you see now, I think with a lot of the bigger, more like northeastern schools, like all of the controversy that's happened around that, you see a lot more people wanting to migrate to like the southern schools now. Vanderbilt's gotten crazy. I think any of those markets that have have job growth and
Hmm.
academia, pro business, and hospitality is kind of what we look at.
Right. Amazing. So I want to go back to a point that you said earlier. You said that because you were able to dive into the condo side first, it kind of allowed you to scale up faster in a way. Do you think, like, what were some of the other factors or, some of the critical decisions that allowed you to scale so fast and then obviously now like manage and raise over a billion in AUM?
We're not quite at a billion yet. It probably includes the pipeline, but that's really nice.
Yes.
But we have full circled, hundreds of millions, so that's
Right.
good. But um, I would say, you know, some of it was just really great timing, but it's just about seeing the opportunity. Like there's always another Nashville. I came to Nashville. There wasn't any institutional players here really yet. I mean, there was some. It was a growing market. It was exciting, but you could still like park your car at the airport and like walk in and get someone. It was just like very small town feel. And then it, you have the music industry, it just started blowing up. And at that time, there just wasn't a lot of like bigger players. And so when I met the main developers around town, and some of them would have their performance on like Word documents, and it was just like country club deals. And so I started cold calling institutional capital very early on, and they almost didn't really care that I didn't have a track record because they were so excited about Nashville, but nobody was like bridging that gap. So it's just kind of like looking where the puck is going. I do that in locations now. I do it in asset classes. It's not just condos. I'm doing it in an industrial outdoor storage strategy as well. Like, where is this trend going, and how can you kind of capitalize on it early and then have enough staying power to really realize it? Like, if I just bought a bunch of land 10 years ago, I probably would have made just as much money, and
Yeah.
just sold it. But,
Agreed.
it just, I didn't have $100 million sitting around then, so it's like, it's just tough. You
Yeah.
have to just see where, you have to just look at markets and trends and kind of, try to figure out where things are going.
Agreed. So you mentioned earlier that following the trends would it kind of allowed you to raise the capital despite having no track record. What like how were you able to raise the capital besides that? Because I imagine like it must have been really hard to raise the capital with no track record, entering a new market, and especially like entering this field of development.
How did I do that?
Yeah. How did you raise the capital for your first
I
project?
just cold called people. I really did. I mean, I literally like had no idea what I was doing, and that's probably how I did it because I just didn't know how hard it was. Because I just, um, I think I went on like that first deal I found online. I think I needed like $2 million. I posted it on Bigger Pockets, and I raised some money that way. Or I think I raised like $1 million. I posted it on Bigger Pockets. Um, which I don't recommend. It's probably illegal or something. And then my second deal, So basically, when I first started, I would just I think I just Googled like where do you get money for real estate? I had no idea that normally, now if I do $100 million project, I'm going to take on 60 to $70 million in debt. I need 30 million in equity, and I would have to come up with 3 million, right? Like I didn't know that at the time. So I bought lists online, um, of different investors, and I actually think my first investor came from the CCIM directory. I took all those classes, and there's like a network of other CCIM commercial real estate people,
Yeah.
and he was in there, and I just called him like 10 times or something and kept bothering him. And he finally was like, fine, I'll come down to Nashville. And he was like, wow, this place is really going to blow up. And so he gave me all the money for my first deal. The first deal was, I think, 22 million in cost. And he was a co-GP, but I didn't know the difference. And he gave me all my first capital. And and then he basically gave me a really, really high hurdle rate, like a really, really high interest. And I
Mm-hmm.
still ended up making like double what he made because it was just a crazy home run deal. It was just like a
Right.
freak thing, like no, it was just perfect timing. So I ended up making more than he did, which was funny because he put up all the money.
That is
But
really
but it was just and we did 560. I mean, he's still my partner now. It's like 10 years ago. So
that's amazing. So
Yeah.
do you think that after your first deal, like kind of the floodgates opened in terms of getting more capital, like reaching the institutional side, or were you still like raising the capital from on your other sources?
It's only really been I mean, that was he runs a
Yeah.
private equity fund.
Okay.
He's a professional investor. So I've never really syndicated, like, I don't really have a lot of family or like friends that have that type of money. So
Yeah.
I kind of skipped all that, which is a blessing and a curse. And, I mean, I think it can be good or bad. I think it kind of keeps your deal sizes small, but it also, there's a lot of opportunity there. But absolutely, like once I had one investor and I didn't even have to finish him. It was like, oh, well, she knows how to build these buildings. And then, I had an institutional investor come in. But then, at some point, like after I got a first couple deals, I hired like an MBA guy that could underwrite and like I didn't know how to do any of that, and then did all my spreadsheets and that went to Wharton and you know what I mean? So it's like you create more credibility as you go, as you
Move
go
forward.
along and build
Yeah.
your track record. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't necessarily have one when you first started. I mean, like I said, I partnered with people that had built things, so I think that
Right.
helped. But, my first partners just didn't seem to care, I think because it was just such a great market.
Yeah. That's amazing. So I
Hmm.
know that a lot of your projects now they are focused on like design, lifestyle, and wellness. Like how important and like do you think that is in development and do you see that as a going on trend that's gonna like drive more demand, attract more capital as these projects are more so-called purpose driven, as one would say?
Um, I don't know. Ask me how Adam Newman just got a $2.5 billion valuation for Flow. I don't even know what that means, but so it seems like it would be right. But it really just, like I said, it depends on what your specialty is. Like I really like bringing a product that's middle market, like not luxury,
Okay.
but better design. So I have my, soulmate architect from California that does most of our stuff in terms of look and feel. And I
And
really try to apply that to a middle market price point. Like I'm
okay.
not trying to sell my condos for $1,600 a foot like the Four Seasons. I'm trying to sell them for
Yeah.
$800 a foot. And so that's what I've decided I want. You know what I mean? I want like modern lifestyles for more people than ultra luxury. Mainly because I used to build a lot of homes for really miserable rich people that I just said this isn't very fulfilling. So that's what I chose. Affordable housing is something that's like super needed and wanted right now. Like I
Right.
said, industrial, like it just depends on what you decide. But for me, I see that being something that is needed and wanted and just better design in general. I mean, it's not at a high bar here. It's like, you know, it's not a high bar. So I
Mhm.
just try to do a better job of design, incorporating features that people appreciate. There's always trends and amenities, but right now we're doing pickleball and cold plunge and, the whole thing because
Yeah.
that's what people want. But I really try to work with our architect out of LA. His name's Alex Pettis, and he is just really brilliant at kind of creating a classical palette that is just very comfortable to live in without being like stark modern. And so that's what I try to give people because I think it makes people's lives better when they don't live in somewhere that's just cluttered and,
Agreed.
messy.
Completely agreed.
Yeah.
So was this architect someone that you worked with when you were doing your luxury homes in Bel Air? Or like you said, you knew him for a long time.
I met him when I was in the luxury home business. That's when I
Okay.
met him.
Amazing. Cool. And that's great. So just in terms of like what drew you to condos specifically? Because I know in development, people always say that you need to niche down and become an expert only at one product type. Like what drew you to condos specifically, and how are you also at the same time able to do these other projects? Just like I assume it's like with your board of advisory and like your team and everything, but what drew you to condos in the first place?
Um, I first got to Nashville. So I just really didn't know. I mean, I first got to Nashville and I didn't know how hard condos were, but I just saw a need for it. Like, I think my husband and I were young and shopping we wanted to buy something in Nashville. We knew it was going to keep going up. We came from California, but there wasn't a lot to buy in our price point. I think we wanted like 500,000 or something like that, and there just wasn't a lot in that point to buy. And so I think that's what got me diving into the condo market. And then I just started being like, well, gosh, every project, like every 25 projects is a huge multifamily building. I think there's like 50 condo units for every 1,000 multifamily units. So I thought there's a huge oversupply of multifamily in Nashville. It's a massive problem now. We probably have 2 years of supply sitting on the market.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to happen a lot sooner. But again, I'm not like some quant. Like, I just drive around town and there's tower cranes everywhere and they're all multifamily. Like, that's my only way to look at a market. I don't really do a lot of, I think my finance guys do a much more in-depth analysis. But like, when I'm like, hey, this is a good market, it's because I have, a good feeling about it and I can see the activity and like, what's going on there. So I think that's why I was just naturally drawn to condos.
And I want to ask you this in terms of local engagement, because I know obviously it's different in LA because of all the different rules that we have to go through with CEQA and the different EIRs and everything. Do you see like how important it is to get the community involved with your projects over in Nashville as compared to LA, like in terms of like design and like what the community wants?
Nobody cares here what the community wants, to be honest, if it's by right. They just don't. I just do that because I think it's a good to do for the community. Most of what gets built is not good.
Yeah, Meg, so I was asking about getting the community involved within your projects because I know in LA, obviously with all the different rules, like we need like concerning CEQA, the EIRs, we need community engagement to get these projects approved, especially in terms of the affordable side. So I was asking, do you need a lot of community engagement for your projects in Nashville, and how important has that been for you?
So it's really not that important here. I hate to say, like, if you have to change your zoning, then you do need community engagement. But one thing that's good about our community is they realize that the way to create more affordability is to create more supply. And so people are generally pro-build. Obviously, we all want more affordable housing. I want more affordable housing as well. I just can't, my investors won't pay for that, right? Like, it has to be like a partnership with the city. In Nashville in general, like if you're not trying to get a zoning change, you can just build a lot of what you want. They are trying to create more like design standards and things, but it's generally been very pro-build, which is why we have so much supply. But it's also pretty affordable to have a apartment here now. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It kind of goes, yeah.
What's one strategy that you have found most effective when it comes to raising capital, structuring deals, and whatnot? Because as someone who's getting into the business, someone who's just starting out, like I must imagine it's a big hurdle for them to overcome. Obviously, I think like partnerships, doing JVs, but do you know like any other strategies? Just one of the most important things.
For raising capital?
Yeah, raising capital or structuring deals.
I really just cold called people. Like, I really just didn't, which is kind of a lost art. I don't think that people your age do that. But I just go on LinkedIn and I find people that are doing what I want to be doing and I reach out to them. But I don't just like send them an AI, email. I like look at them, or you can start with AI for sure, but then like look at it and make sure that it's like decent, and be like, hey, I'm a student, kind of how you reached out to me, like,
Right.
This is what I'm doing, I'm really interested, I have this great idea for this project. Like, that's what I did, and I still do. Like, I've raised money from the public impact, which is reaching out to me.
Yeah.
I don't really know. The only other way is to have a track record of a book or something.
And I want to ask you this: how do you see AI getting, like AI getting involved in the development process? Like, are you using it within your business right now?
Yes. What is
Hmm.
that?
Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay.
Um, AI, so I use it to call investors right now. So I have a software that helps me identify investors that would work well for me. We use it obviously for various drafting. We make pitch decks and underwriting. I think my finance guys do use some of it for underwriting, but it still mainly happens in Excel right now. I think eventually that'll go. Um, Legal, it's sort of slow. I have an ambition to use it a lot though. I do believe, I mean, it's going to obviously change everything. We did have a legal software we were using for a while when I had an in-house paralegal. Mainly we outsource a lot now. But yeah, things architecture, like our architect has the software that I can be like, hey, what do you think about this site? And they'll just, you know, overnight be able to give me what I could build there. So I could be like, oh, this is a good idea or not, versus like paying them to do all this thing.
Hmm. Amazing. Meg, I want to ask you this. What is like one hard lesson that you've learned within development and just something that, key takeaway? Was it like managing risk, how to protect your losses, protect your downside? Like what's one hard lesson that you learned as you got into this game?
I've learned like 700 hard
Huh?
lessons. I mean, um, I think like, I trusted a lot of people early on. I've become a lot more hardened, now I would say. Um, I think it's really like if you want to be successful in this, you have to, it's really just about the quality of the project.
Right.
And if it's good and it'll get financed. Raising capital, I mean, it takes a lot of work, a lot of calling. I think a lot of people give up on that aspect of it if they don't have family money or, connections. I didn't have any. I grew up in Sacramento and like I didn't, my family wasn't in real estate or anything, so I had to figure that out. Um, so many. I mean, I have a list of like 100 things. I don't do business with New Yorkers anymore.
Why is
Just
that?
like a lot of things. No, just it's kind of a joke, but you know, don't get into business with any of the wrong people because it takes
Uh-huh.
projects. That's like a 5-year commitment, right? So if you don't really like who you're working with, then that can be an issue because it just goes on and on and on and on. And life's too short. So I'm pretty good. Like, I protect my inner circle. I never over leverage. I really try to underwrite conservatively. I mean, thankfully, most of my projects have been fine in this last recession and through COVID. But like, you need a lot of room in development projects to make it work. It can't be marginal, because there's always like no one could have predicted interest rates going up or COVID or 2008 crash or whatever. Like there's always catastrophe.
Yeah. Meg, you might have to mute again to stop that noise. I don't know what it is. I think it's better now. I don't know what that is.
Okay.
But it's all good. Meg, I want to ask you this on like leadership and legacy now, because this is a question that I'm sure it's gonna, get a lot of good responses. But so I know that you're like a pilot, you're also like a builder and a leader in a very still male dominated industry. Like what mindset or like what habits like do you instill and have you grounded while operating like at such a big level?
Um, I mean, for a long time, I worked, my husband and I are both entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
So we worked a lot, for a decade, worked 80, 90 hours a week. So we worked really hard. Um, but it was an amazing, we have an incredible life. Like we have tons of flexibility. We work from Europe. Like it's awesome. I would say that, now we have young children. We're a bit more balanced, but I think something early on, like I think you have to have a purpose for doing something, and mine is really to like for like I have a lot of philanthropic ambitions after you get past a certain point of success. I saw that living and working in Bel Air, you have these people with tons of money, absolutely miserable. And I think at a certain point, you can't just accumulate things and expect that to make you happy. So I think once you get, and I'm not saying like money does make happiness, I think like I'm happier because I have the means and freedom to have help with my children so I can spend more time with them and travel and have all these conveniences, and I have a beautiful home on the water. But to a certain point, Tennessee's the volunteer state. So at a certain point, you really want to start giving back. And that's kind of what drives me. I think, to stay level headed, I take a lot of really good care of myself. I've done a lot of spiritual counseling. I spend, my husband and I make sure to go on walks, do yoga, really take care of ourselves, eat healthy. I grow a lot of my own food, just kind of really into that because we are operating at such a high pressure level a lot. And it's less so now in my career, but early on it was like, I'm in front of someone or on a panel or forward facing for so long of the day, traveling a ton, that, have your game face on.
Hmm. I want to ask you this, Meg. How has it been having a husband who's also an entrepreneur in the business? Like, I assume it must help, but it's like, how do you navigate both of your lifestyles? Because you guys are working extremely hard. How is one able to balance it and then still come back?
Yes. Well, we try really hard not to work together. He sits on my board, which is good, and he's super smart, but he's kind of more on, finance, crypto. He's more on the investment side of things and just in terms of our own investments. But I think we just don't talk about work at home at all, and we really try to just have a separate marriage than be working all the time. But no, I mean it was really busy in the beginning. We were incredibly focused on our goals, but now we're older. We have two young kids. We're hoping to have a couple more here. I think it was amazing how we did it because we're in such a place now where we're super established. We've checked a lot of the boxes. We don't need, I don't have any desire to travel anymore or do anything really. And so we're incredibly focused and have a lot of quality time with them that I don't think I could have ever dedicated either to my career or my children early on. It would have been sacrificing one or the other.
Right. Completely agreed. And I know you mentioned a lot on like legacy and doing all these philanthropic actions. I want to ask you this. Like when people see Meg Epstein or like CA South in 20 years, like what do you envision them to view you as and like what legacy that you left behind?
Well, I hope in 20 years I'm being pretty full-time
Uh-huh.
philanthropic with some of my human rights projects, but I hope to be exiting. I'm basically launching a new brand that is my condo investment product that I sell to investors, and then they own these units and they can short-term rent them out and they can use them and have a place in Nashville or Charleston and then make a cap rate on it, right? And so I'm launching a brand, and I hope to really scale that out, to several billion in projects. So that's what I'm really going to be focused on. I,
That's so,
I,
so cool.
yes, I was very opportunistic when I started. So I did industrial, I did all these things because I saw what could make money. But now I'm much more focused on stamping and repeating one business model in multiple markets,
Hmm.
which, it just takes a long time to figure out.
So you said that you're like also involved in these different human rights projects and like involved with the community. Like, can you expand more on those and like what exactly are they and what do they do?
It varies. So when I was on for 7 years. I was on the board of Civic Design Center,
Oh,
which is a really great organization here in Nashville that really thinks a lot about shaping the built environment and creating more parks and walkability and greenery. And then, I'm on ULI Council. We give back. We are big proponents of the symphony here. I was the executive director of a nonprofit called Youth for Human Rights, which was really great, and still will be very involved in that, spend a lot of fundraising and such. And then I'm also on the board of the Children's Museum now in Nashville, so we don't have a children's museum here, so that's something I've sort of stepped up to do. So I try to, really keep it on things that matter to us. My husband and I are hopefully going to be fostering some children soon, so it's going to be interesting. We adopted our first, and we just thought it'd be a good thing. So, um,
Congratulations. That's
yeah.
really, really cool. Really, really cool. How did you become a pilot? I want to ask you this. Like, yeah,
I did it for my senior project in high school.
okay.
Yeah.
Have you flown recently or no?
It's been a little bit. I was actually gonna go up last fall, and the day before this, like it was super sad in Nashville. This whole family crashed, and I was supposed to like go up the next day, and I hadn't been up, and I was like, no. So I honestly don't dedicate enough time to it right now. We are launching an outdoor storage strategy, which I didn't talk about because it's just a whole separate thing. That's in a lot of tertiary markets, and if that's the case, I'll probably dust it off so I can fly a little bit more because it's not like a lot of nonstop flights to the Tulsas of the world. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, I hope to more. Do you fly
amazing.
a lot?
No, but I want to get my pilot's license as well. It's something that I've always aspired to do. So, yeah,
It's
very, very
actually too easy. I mean, I think you can do it in like 40 hours. I was like, really? You're just
cool
gonna let
too.
me fly a plane
Okay,
in like 16?
yeah, I'll
But
do it this upcoming summer. That'll be
yeah,
exciting.
yeah.
And Meg, I want to ask you just this last question for like any young developer, young investor, or any founder, anyone who wants to get into the real estate game or leave like a lasting impact. What is the best piece of advice that you could give them and what they should focus on?
Um, I would say there's two avenues, right? I mean, one is entrepreneurship, which I've gone, which is not for the faint-hearted and is probably for 3 to 5% of the people listening, um, or maybe 2%. And you should read The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz and realize all of the, Elon Musk steering into the abyss, eating glass quotes. Like, that's real. Like, I've been in situations on the other hand, but it's completely worth it for me, right? Like I've never really been, I think I was an employee maybe 2 years of my life. And I think I quit once and got fired the second and just started my own company when I was like 24. So,
Yeah.
there's that path. And if you're going to commit to that path, it is a huge commitment. And I would say that the key is absolute persistence and grit. And, so you just have to be really prepared for it. But like I wouldn't have had it any other way. If you're like most people and you work in commercial real estate, um, you can do where I'm looking at this from people like when I go to hire now, because I've had 20 employees and I have 5. And really what I've done is, especially with AI and how much you can outsource now, I've really eliminated like middle market entitled millennials. Like I
Hmm.
really don't, I'm just being honest, right? I hire assassins, executives, and admins to support those people.
Hmm.
I do not hire people that make 125 grand a year and don't do this and do this and need a lunch break and need a company retreat and all the kumbaya. I don't do that, and I don't think it fits very well in real estate. I've done that before. I've done the whole like I've spent a lot of time and money doing that and have overhead. And what I've learned is that, especially in a business like real estate development, like it's just very high caliber. And if you want to do well for someone your age, any superior or boss or anyone you work with is going to value hard, not being entitled, um, just not being entitled, I would say, raising capital, bringing deals, those are always unique things. You don't have to do it on your own. You can do it with someone or do it under someone, but you can, have ownership that way or have promote. And really loyalty, which I think it's just is sort of missing, I think, in the younger generations. And it's something I value a lot. I have a young guy working for me that, you know, stayed with me all through this recession, even though he didn't see the clear path in the end. He just sort of believed in what I was doing. And there were people making a lot more than he was that left. And, just that loyalty and him sticking with it and just taking on more and more work and roles and not complaining about having to do insurance and asset management and all the things people don't like to do. And now he's going to make, I'm sure, more than anyone else he knows his age. So, but he had to earn it. And I think that for the younger people, which makes me sound like I'm like, oh my God, I'm not even 40 yet, but I do feel old. I'm older. Um, it's just that I think that's sort of lost a little bit, that grit. And for this business, it's very, you gotta have a lot of hustle. Or you could be a broker. That's what I probably would have done. No risk. You can make a lot of money being a broker just by like hustling. So those are kind of the three paths I would recommend, and they're very different.
Amazing. Very,
Yeah.
very cool. Meg, look, if you ever come back down to LA or like UCLA, I would love, love to meet you. It'd be such an honor, but
I will let you know I don't make it to LA as much. I did go on campus for the first time in like 20 years last year with my good friend because I was at the Beverly Hills Hotel and I was like, oh, we're so close. I'll just go over there. But I'll let you know.
very,
Thank
very
you.
cool. Yes. And I would just like to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm sure our listeners are going to find this super helpful. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about the
No,
noise.
no, you're
Everything.
good. You're good.
We need to
It's all
hang up.
good.
Okay,
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
bye.
Bye.